All right, what we are going to attempt to do between now and the end of this week, I don't want to go more than 2 to 2.5 hours a period. I mean, it's hard to just sit there and listen and type and listen and type. I want you to be able to absorb. That makes sense. But we're going to make this. We're going to have 2 activities. The first activity, what we're going to have is we're going to have 46 of these, 1 for each president. So it'll be a picture of the president, president's first name, president's last name, and when the president served, like that. Does that make sense? So if you imagine we're not, but if we did it reverse order, we'll have a separator here, and then here it would say like, does all that make sense? All right. Plus, we're going to go and we're going to add, because we haven't talked menus yet, so we're going to create a menu. And we're going to have 4 options that are going to be in there. We're going to be able to either sort it in ascending order based on the president's last name, or in descending order based on their last name, or in ascending order on when they served, or on descending order from when they served. Does that make sense? Now, I'm not going to go and do all the stuff, because they do mention it in the book, in our PDF, about putting icons and stuff in. I'm not going to do that. It's just going to be a simple sort menu. All right? Then we're going to set it up so that if you do a long click, which means you click on it, so let's say you clicked on Biden right there. It's going to come up and it's going to say something like this. ID 46, name Joe Biden, URL, that's going to have a URL in there. Does all that make sense? And then there'll be like save and cancel. So you accidentally put Trump's picture in for Biden, let's just say. All right, so you long click on Biden, and it comes up looking like this, and that URL is wrong. You've got all those URLs because that's one of the things I sent you. So you just change the URL that's in there. All right, you click save, and it immediately pops you back into here. And it should, hopefully it'll then put the right picture. Does all that make sense? So what this will allow us to do is to go over a few things. First, recycler views. All right. Second, even though we've done it before, we'll go through intents again. So we can go back and forth between the 2 machines. Okay? All right. But the recycler view is the new thing. And in order to be able to use that URL, we're going to have to go into the manifest file and add just a line of text, and it's not hard. And we're going to have to tell it in the manifest file that we want to use the internet. Okay? Now, when we get done with all this, what I'm hoping to do, this will be, doing this is going to be 2 parts. The first part, I want you to do this. Okay? The second part, and I've already been working on this, but the second part I'm telling you about, but I haven't tried it yet. Okay? What I'm hoping is we can add down here, after we get done with this, a spinner. That spinner will have all 46 names in it. I know that's a lot of names. But, so let's say you pick George Washington. If you pick it, that'll fill this up with George Washington. Does that make sense? And I'm doing that in lieu of giving you a lot of assignments for this one. So half of, part of your grade will be based on what we do together, and the other part, etc. Okay? Hopefully all of that made sense. Or if nothing else, at least you were shaking your head yes. So that's good. All right. So we're coming in here. We're going to create a new project. It will be an empty activity. And I mean, we can call it whatever we want. I just called mine, President Recycler View. You can make it 2 words, Recycler View. All right. Now, the RecyclerView is a fairly new addition to Android. Not real new, but a few years new. I'm not even going to worry about using legacy supported libraries. I'm not going to worry about that, all right? So we're going to be using 4.1 and above, so that should be fine. And notice too, so the only people we're keeping out technically are 0.2% of people, okay? All right, so click Finish. And we're going to have on here a really, this first page has got almost an unbelievably simple GUI. Okay, we're going to make both pages right now. So I'm going to let this load. And it looks like it's pretty much done. So I'm going to go over to activity main here. And like I said, all kidding aside, this probably will take us about 2 minutes to build. All right. Don't know why it's doing what it's doing. It says I got the text view, but I want to get rid of that anyway. Okay, that's good. That's what I want. All right. First thing I'd like you to do is let's drag in a button. Okay. And I've talked to you about this before, but again, I'm just going to take this and drag it up. Okay. And the interface isn't, like I said, it's going to be nothing spectacular, but we're only going to go 8 pixels from the top. All right. Then I'm going to right mouse click on the button and I'm going to choose center horizontally, which sets up the other 2. We talked about this before, right? Okay. The other thing we should do right away, 2 things. First, let's go into our res values strings file. This is going to be like a little bit longer name for a button, but I want it to be where anybody who looks at it understands everything. All right, and I'm going to call it add or edit BTN. All right, and I'm going to say add or edit a president. Okay. Now again, if you don't like my names for buttons and for this stuff and strings, call it whatever you want, but some of the stuff that we do in here may matter later in the code. All right. So with that done, I'm jumping back into my activity main. I'm going to click on my button. First thing I want to do is I want to rename it. So I'm going to call it BTN add or edit president. A little long for a name, but since all that stuff is basically filled in for us by the editor anyway, I'm not really worried about it. Then under the text here, I'm going to get, of course it asks, do you want to change this? Yes, refactor it. And then it asks you, so I'm going to get rid of the text that's in there. I'm going to click on here, and I'm going to let it find this for me. So add or edit button, boom. Okay, all of that makes sense. I'm taking for granted that it worked for both of you. Okay. All right. Then I'm going to come out here to RecyclerView that's right here, and I'm going to go and drag one of those in. All right. Now, it's greedy. It's trying to take up the entire page. You see that? I don't want that. So I want this to go down, and I had problems doing this before, but I'm going to try it anyway. So I'm going to say here, I'm going to try 32 and see what happens. See how it's moving it down? Can you see that? Well, I don't want there to be any, I don't want it constrained to the top here. So I just cleared my constraints. With me? I just cleared them. And I'm going to actually just try this again, and I'm going to make it even bigger than it was. So I'm going to make this, I'm going to manually type in here 48. And now it moved it down. Can you see that? And I don't want it to be linked up to here. I want it to be actually linked up to the bottom of my button. So I'm going to try one more thing. See if I can get this to work. There, 64. All right. Now, I don't know how this will work or if this will work, but I'm going to click right here on this constraint, this thing. And what I want is I want it to be constrained down here. I may have to go in and change that in code mode. Okay, so far I've got my button with my ID on it. We're going to give an ID to the recycler view in just a second. All right, but let's see. Okay, I'm going to change this from layout constraint top to top of. All right, I want top to bottom of, and I want it to be the bottom of this button right here. So I think I'm going to have to do it like this. You see what I just did? Now, the unveiling, there it is. That's what I wanted. Okay? So this is kind of in its own area, and this is kind of in its own area. Does that make sense to both of you? I am going to click on this, and it says 64. Well, that's actually, I don't know if that's really 64 now. I'm just wondering if I go back and make this 8. No, that's not what I want then. Okay, I did need the 64. All right, I'll just leave it there. If I had, no, I screwed it up, of course, because I manually changed it. Straight to bottom of, I don't want this absolute X in here. That may be what actually was screwing it up. I don't know. There. Nope. Try again. I'm just going to leave it like that. I think it's going to be fine like that. As we get working in here, we may have to do some constraints in here. I don't know if it's going to make us or not. I've worked with this thing, and sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I literally, to make, just so there's something in there, usually I put like 1 here, and I'll put a 1 here. 1 pixel is so small that it's really not going to affect anything. Does that make sense? All right. Now, when we first start working on this and we get it to where we're putting things in, it's not going to look the way we want it to look. And what I'm getting to is right now, this says that we want it to match the parent. No, that's not what we're going to want. Later, we're going to want it to wrap the content. Otherwise, every page, basically one whole screen is going to be for each president. You see what I'm saying? We don't want that. But we'll worry about that later. All right, let's give this a new ID. Let's call it RV Presidents. Not the greatest name, but it'll work. All right, I'm not going to run it now because since there's nothing yet in the recycler view, you wouldn't see anything. All you'd see would be the button, and that's fine, but who cares? All right. So let's go in and we're going to add our second activity. All right, so you know how to do this. Go up here where it says edu.rankin or whatever yours is, way up here, right mouse click, new, activity, empty activity. All right, as always, we're asked to give this a name. And again, let's call it what it is. And that is add or edit president. Okay? Because that's what we're going to do on this. We're going to add or we're going to edit a president. Okay? All right. And it should give you this down here. It's not going to be a launcher. It's in the correct package right now, and it is Java we're using. So finish. It'll give you this. We're not going to worry at all about the code for this, but we are going to go in, so I'm going to even close this. All right, we're going to start making this right now. And it's not going to be very difficult. We're going to put in 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know, 5, let's say, 4 or 5 text views and a couple edit texts. Okay? All right. Now, first thing we want to do is I'm going to just, like I said, I'm going to throw in some text views. I'm not worried about the color or any of that stuff. I'm supposing that if you want to, that you'll find some kind of a color you'd like for it when you get done. all right? But I'm not going to worry about that right now. So the first thing we have here is a text view, and we're going to name this right away, and I'm going to just call it TV ID, big I, big D. And it's going to be the ID of the president, all right? Remember, we're going to put this into what's called a Java array list, and they start with 0, okay? And just keep that in mind, all right? So I'm going to come back in. I'm just going to be bopping back and forth here, but I'm going to come in here, and it says, you know, I just asked to rename it, of course. Yes, I do want to rename it, refactor it. That's done. Then I'm going to come in here, and I might as well set these up right now because there are going to be several of them. So I'll give you all of them right now. So string name equal ID TV. And it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be simple on purpose. This is just going to say ID with a colon at the end. All right. The next one is going to say name. So it'll be name TV. And it'll say name. Then we'll have another one, and it'll be name date. I don't like date. How about served TV? And we're just going to say served. And finally, the last one is going to say, it'll be URL TV, and it's just going to say URL. So what I'm telling you is we're about to go in and set this up so that it has 4 different text views. So it'll be ID, then name, then served, etc. All make sense? All right. Well, for the name, we're going to actually have 2 edit texts. We'll have a first name and a last name. If we put it in as one name, we'd have to do one of 3 things. Either if we put it in as, because we're going to want to sort on last name, sorting on first name would be foolish. All right, but if we want to sort on the last name, then either we have to use some JavaScript string functions and tell it to only search from after the blank space on. See what I'm saying? And that's just kind of, yeah. So we're going to use 2 different edit texts that we're going to put in. One of the edit text will be for the first name, one will be for the last name. All right, and then we will basically put the whole thing together. All right, but under name, we're going to have 2 things. That's why I'm telling you that. Hopefully this is going to look fine. So string name equal, and let's see, we won't need anything for that, for the ID. You don't have to worry about that. That's going to be filled in for us automatically. Okay. In fact, I guess we can. We can say ID hint. And we'll say ID goes here. All right. These are all going to be just hints because they're going to be edit texts. In fact, that's ID. That one's not going to be in. Let's see. That one will be a text view. All right. So, and I want to call them basically the same thing. So, name, hint, and that's going to be an edit text. We'll just put name. That's fine. Again, I want to keep this simple. String name equals served hint edit text served and string name equals all right. So again, what we're building is going to be pretty simple. Okay? I mean, I look like it right now, but it will be. And the good news is, for now at least, that's virtually everything that we're going to need in there. Okay, you got it? All right. So I'm going to jump back into the other activity main. And this will hold the ID in just a second. Then underneath that, I'm just going to throw these in here. We're going to have the name. Then underneath that, we're going to have the date. Then underneath that, we're going to have the URL. Okay? Now I'm going to grab another text view because that text view is actually going to have an editable set defaults. You will want to be able to go in and edit the president's name or date or time they served or their image. But we're not going to let them play with the ID. It's kind of like an ID we'd have if we were working with a primary key in a database. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. Okay. So then I'm going to go and I'm going to come in here again. We're going to put all the names and everything in here in just a second. But I'm going to go to text and I'm going to grab a plain text. And I know it says name right here and it's real big, but I think I can cut the size of this down. It's got wrap content. I'm going to change the size of this. I'm going to make it 50 SP and 50 SP. It may have to be smaller. We'll see in just a second. It's actually a little bit too small. So instead of 50 for the width, let's try 75. Probably is going to be good enough. Okay. And I'm going to throw another one right next to it. Just like that. Oh, not a text view. I'm sorry. I'm going to throw another plain text right next to it. And now it looks too big, but I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make it 75 SP and 75 SP. All right, nope. I guess whatever the size was to begin with. So maybe that's not that. I want these two things to be the same size. Let's try this. Let's try this. And that looks good. All right. Now I'll have to worry about prettying them up in just a minute, but you get the idea, correct? Okay. And underneath that, we're going to have another edit text, which is going to be the date when they serve. So again, I'm going to come out to plain text, and that one I'll just put in here. Let it take up as much room as it wants. And then finally, one more that's going to hold the URL. All right. We're going to pretty this thing up in just a second. All right. Let's start by renaming stuff. So this first thing right here, this is going to be a text view. I guess we already put that in. We got a text view for the ID. Good. This second one will be the text view name. And every one of these, yes, you want to search and refactor, etc. The next one is going to be TV served. And the last one is going to be TV URL. Okay. You will have all those. Then let's just go back up to the top, and where we got this first text view, get rid of the text, and we're going to replace it with the ID TV. So you'll notice it says ID. We're going to make this bigger in just a second, so it looks really little right now, but it'll be fine in just a minute. All right, this second one that's here that we call TV name, we're again going to come in and get rid of the text, and we're going to come over here and find name TV. So that's name. The next one, we're going to come in and again remove the text, and we'll find served TV. And finally, the last one will come in and remove the text. And it'll be URL TV. Okay? You cool with all that? All right. I'm going to go and see if, whoops, it didn't work. So let's see. Can I highlight all of these at once? Yes, I think I can. Okay. So I've just highlighted all of them at once by drawing one of those, lassoing it. And the only reason I'm going to do that is I'm going to go down here to text size. It's 14 right now. I'm going to try it at 18 and see what it looks like. That looks much better to me. See that? And I'm also going to change the text style to bold. Okay? To me, that looks a lot better than it did. All right. So the next thing that I want to do, because none of these things right now are constrained, I think you'd agree with that. So I'm going to start with the ID. I'm going to click right there, and I'm going to drag it up to the top, or attempt to. All right, then I'm going to bring it down, and I'm just going to make it 8. All right. Then I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to drag left. You've done this before. And again, I'm going to make that 8. So it's 8 and 8. You with me? All right. Now, we're going to do this one a little bit different because I want it to basically be set up the way you'd probably set it up in an actual application. This we may end up later. We may decide we want all of these to be the same size. So you can change that if you want to. It's up to you. All right. So I want to take this, and basically what I want to do is I want to set it so it's right there. I'm going to do it again so you see it. I'm going to click right here, and I want to set it up so it evens up with the bottom of that one right there. See that? But I do want 8 pixels there. And I want to constrain this again all the way over to here with 8 pixels. See that? I don't want there to be, I want to make sure there's plenty of room because we're still going to put a couple buttons down here too, and that later we can put that spinner down there if we can get that far. Okay, you understand? That's why I'm not putting much room, etc. in here. All right, then I'm going to go to served. And again, I'm going to take this and I'm going to link this up with the bottom of that one with 8 pixels. And over here, move that over, and again with 8 pixels. All right, and finally do the same thing with URL. Okay, so that's what I've got right now. I realize it doesn't look like much, but that's fine. It'll get better, hopefully, as we go on. All right, so this is going to hold our text view right there. This is going to hold our first name. This is going to hold our last name. Hopefully that makes sense to all of you. All right, and what do I have here? So ID, first name, last name, ID, name, served, URL. Okay. We might even have to cut down the size of this some more. I don't know. But I want it to basically come over to here. So if nothing else, what I'll do is right now, notice the height says wrap content. Well, I'm going to try to set it myself manually. And don't do it yet because I want to wait until it looks decent. So I'm going to try it at 30 SP. Of course, it didn't take that. Try it again. 30 SP. All right. Now, the text is too big for it right now. I don't care about that. I can fix that later. That looks better. All right. And the other one, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to take that one and also make it 30 SP. All right. And then bring that up. Now, again, I just want to make sure you understand what I'm trying to do here is this will be the first name. This will be the last name. You with me? All right, so right now it looks funky, for lack of better words. We're going to make it look better in just a second. I forgot to do the text view one. We'll do that, the top one. We'll do that one in a second. All right. So the first thing is, did we change the name? We already did. Edit text, text person name. I don't even know what the hell that is. All right. This one will be edit text first name. Okay, right there. And yes, we'll refactor it. And this one will be edit text last name. All right. And again, we'll refactor it. Okay, so it's getting there, for lack of better words. Okay? All right. Before we set the constraints, which we're going to do next, let's go back up to the one for the ID here. Let's fix that one up a little bit. You with me? So click on the ID that's right here. That mine says text view 5. Well, I don't want it to say that. I'm just going to call it TV. Now, I can't say TV ID because I already have that. Okay? So I'm going to say TV the ID. All right, and again, I'll tell it to change it, refactor it, and there's not going to be anything in there other than the hint. Are you with me? All right. So the text I can get rid of, but I want to go down and find hint. There it is. And in here, I want ID hint TV. All right. So it should look like this and say now ID goes here. You got that? Okay. All right. Now, this one we've got set up. You have to go back to that one. But this one we've got set up so that it's what? It's 8 pixels from the top. Now, when you do this, for this one, we could do the same thing. I just want to show you two things, okay? If you look up on the screen, I can click here, and I can do the same thing. I can go back up to the top, and then I can go change it to 8. And that'll work just fine. All right, that is kind of what we want it to do. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to clear those constraints, because I want to show you another thing that you can do. This is why a lot of people don't build things from design view. They go right into code mode, all right? So they go into the code. But I can click here and I can say, I want the top of this to go to the top of this. You see what I'm saying? I'm not that good. I can't do that. So either I have to go and do what I told you as far as just make that 8. Oh, in fact, it did do it. See that? So that's good. All right. Usually when I try something like that, it doesn't work. In fact, I'm just going to make sure because I'm going to clear my constraints. In fact, if I've got it like that, I don't want it to be 8. I want it to be 0. Now they're equal to one another. I'm going to say that again because I want you to hear this. So what I did was I clicked here, I grabbed my top constraint right there, and I dragged over to the top constraint here. All right. But if I say 8 now, what I'm saying is I want it equal to the one that's to the left of it, but down 8 pixels. I don't want that. I want it to be equal and even. So the idea behind this is if I move one of them, the other one basically kind of moves with it. Does that make sense? All right. We may need to change the size of this. I don't know. I'm not really going to worry about it. But if I look at it right now and I go down to text size, it's 14. And I'm going to guess, at least for now, that's okay. If later when you do this, I'm going to want you to personalize this. So I'm going to want you to pretty it up. We're not worrying about pretty right now. We're worrying about making it functional. Okay? All right. So I'm going to come into here. And one of the reasons this looks so weird right now is, first of all, we want to change the name, but the size of the text is 18. I'm going to change it, for now at least, to 14 here and to 14 here. All right. All right. Now, what may happen, because I've cut this down so much, is when we put the hint in, it may look really terrible. I'm just telling you that right now. Okay? When I built this the first time, I just used one field, so it was much easier to do. But then, we can do that if you want. But then we've got to go in and write a bunch of string manipulations so that we can tell it to go in. We either have to go last name, comma, first name, or, all right, or we have to go in and say, okay, right after your last blank space that's in there, grab everything till the end of the line because that's the last name. Do you understand what I'm saying? All right. So I'm going to just leave it like this. And I'm going to come in here, and I don't want there to be any text in there, but I do want the hint to come in. So I'm going to get rid of the text. I'm going to go to hint, and this was the first name hint. Do I have one? Did I put in a first name and a last name hint? Well, let me look. So I'm going to go to my strings, and we put in just a name hint. Well, we should have a first name and a last name hint because there's a first name and a last name. So please go into your strings and make these changes. So this one will say first name, hint, ET, and the other one will be last name, hint, ET. In fact, let's just put in first, and then the other one we'll put in last. Okay? It isn't even mandatory that we put any hint in there. There's a lot of other ways we could do it. If we wanted it to stand out, we could change its color, for example. So there's a lot of things that we can do. I mean, in a way, probably what we're doing here by putting first and last, it might be considered overkill. That's okay. All right, so I'm going to jump back into here. And right there, I'm going to go now back to hint. And I want to find first name, hint, ET, and put that in. And there's first. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the last. My guess is, just right now looking at this and how small it is, it's probably going to look really funky. So we may have to go in and change the size. I'm just warning you of that right now. Okay? All right. So for the last name that's right here, so I've got first right there. You can barely see it, but it's there. I could come in with a text size and make it 10. Still is hard to see. I could come in and I could make it 8. And it still is hard to see. And the reason that it's hard to see like that is that it's expecting this to be taller. Okay? So I'm just going to leave it where it was, which I think was 14. Okay? So I'm going to leave that at 14. This one right here, I'm going to also make sure it's 14. And I'm going to change. I'm going to get rid of the text. I'm going to go down to, or up to the hint. And I'm going to set that to last name hint. Okay? So I realize it looks a little weird, for lack of better words right now. It'll be fine. Okay, so got this. All right. First thing I want to do is I want to take this right here and I want to put that over to here. And you get that message. You probably have seen this before. Do you want to go to the top or to the bottom? Well, here we want to go to the bottom. All right. So now that one is linked that way, and I want to do the same thing here. All right. And it looks a little weird. I'm not sure if it's set up correctly or not, but I'm going to try moving it down 8 to see if it looks okay. It doesn't. All right, so that one is okay. This one I don't think is okay. It says that it is, though. All right. Now, these are linked, but only to this one right here. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to link this one to here. But then I've got to move it over. I don't know how much. Try 32. No, not 32 there. Sorry. Try 32 here. Looks like it didn't move over enough. So that should be 8. Let's try 48. That looks pretty good. Now again, everything that we're doing, we probably could do faster by going into the code section here. So if you want to do that, then do that. Okay? All right, so I'm going to click here. Again, this should be 8. Now these two are lined up. Okay, and I'm going to grab this one, and I'm going to grab my right constraint and pull that over and try to make that 48 and see how it looks. It It may be pretty centered then, it may not be. It's not. Okay, so it needs to go over further than that. Or does it? I mean, another thing that I can do is I can set it up and I can have the left constraint here equal to the left constraint right there. See that? All right. Now, as far as I can tell at least, it's fully constrained. Does everything I said make sense to both of you? All right. So now when you look on here, well, I'm looking on the ID. It still says something, and I think what it's going to tell me, let's see. I'm not sure, but we'll look at it in a bit. All right. Okay. It's getting there, for lack of better words. So I've got first name, I've got last name, and when you look on here, it says missing that autofills. You know how to put that in, right? So in other words, for both of these, for the first name and the last name, the easiest way is to go back into the code mode. All right. So the first one was text view, first name. So you can come in, you can do it anywhere in here, but I'm going to type in that autofill. And I think you say no. All right. I'm not sure if that's, I believe that's the right thing to say, but we'll find out in a second. All right. So let's get back. Let's go back here to design. And that one's gone. See that? So I'll go to the other one, which is my last name. And again, I'll just grab this line and I'll copy it in. Same line. All right. So now, oops, going back to the other one. Now, all that stuff is set. I'll click off of there. Okay. And you'll notice at least those first two have nothing on them right now. That's what we want. All right. Now we want to do the other two. So again, I guess I'm going to have to pull this down a little bit. Can you see this? It looks like it should go down more. I don't want to make it go down too far because we're not going to have enough room down here then. All right. But again, the other thing that I can do is I can change the width of this again. So let's try doing that. So I'm going to come in here and just like we did before, I'm going to try to change the width to about, I don't know, 200 SP. I may have to change this again. I guess I can leave it. Let's make it 250. Oh, that's too big, 225. That's good. All right, but the height has got to be down. So right now it's wrap content. Remember what wrap content means. It means take all the room you can, for lack of better words. All right, I'm going to try to cut this down to about 100 SP. Okay, or that's way too much. How about 50 SP? That's better, but it's still not enough. How about 25 SP? All right, that doesn't look too bad. So now I can put that in here. All right. Now, the way I'm doing this, not very professional, sorry, but I'm eyeballing stuff. Why am I doing it this way? I'm actually doing it this way on purpose because we did another project where we basically did everything from code mode. Now we're doing it the other way. Most people do a combination of the two. All right, and I'm looking at this. Oh, I'm just going to be wanting to be moved over just a tad. That's pretty good. All right, and this right now, I don't know how I screwed up all of these buttons, but I did. And this one is what? This is the ET served. And again, it will not have text in it, but it will have a hint in it. All right, so I got to go down to here and find my hint. There it is. And there's my served hint ET. Okay, that's weird because it didn't put anything in there. It might be again because I've got it so narrow. I don't know. And I got to constrain this now. Constrain it there. And after I do that, I think we said it was 48 that we moved it over. That's pretty good right there. I'm going to constrain this. All right, and again, I'm going to move it over. I don't know how much. 32. Nope, how about 48 that way? Still isn't enough. Now I'm just manually moving it because I don't want to waste anybody's time going over all this stuff. All right, so here, even 48 looks a little too small. Let's try this. Let's try 64. That's pretty good. Again, it isn't perfect. I'm going to let you make yours perfect. All right, so we've got that. And then we're going to do the same thing with name. Now this one was 225 by 25, so I'm going to do the same thing here. And again, this is edit text URL. All right. And again, I don't need this, but I can go over to the hint. The order in which you do this, I think you both know. Doesn't matter. So for hint, I have a URL hint et. There it is. All right. And I want the size of this to be the same size as the one up above it. Okay. So I'm going to make this as that one was. I'm going to go up to the width and the height and make this 225 SP by 25 SP. All right. Then I'm going to move this so it's pretty much into position. Okay. And I'm going to link this up with this. Now, the other one was 64, but this is not as big. So, you know, there's URL as opposed to the word served. So this is going to have to be something different. So I'm going to try like 78. And that was a pretty good guess. It wasn't perfect, but it was a pretty good guess. All right, let's make it about 76. That looks pretty, well, not still not. 72 maybe. That's pretty good. All right, and then finally I'm going to link this one over. Oops. And then I've got to move it back. So this one was 64. So try 64 here. All right. So almost finished right now. All right. I do want to link this up with the bottom of this one. So to the bottom. All right. And that's the way it looks. Again, it's not perfect. You can fix yours up any way you want. The reason I'm doing it like this, though, again, I want to say this again. What I'm sick of is when you run your app, you can only see part of it on the screen. You see what I'm saying? I don't want that. I want you to be able to see virtually all of it on here on the screen. All right, let's come in and let's add 2 buttons. And, you know, about here and about here. Again, we'll fix them up in real quick. All right, so this first one, I'm going to link this up to here, to the bottom. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Okay, looks like I got to pull that down. And this one will say 16. Give them a little bit more room than we did the other ones, and that one is also 16. Okay, then we'll grab this, move that over to here, move that over. I don't know how many. I'm going to try 64. You know what? That'll be fine as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to try this one. I'm going to bring it over. And again, I'm going to try putting 64 here. Take. All right. Again, this is not perfect. All right. But I'm going to come in here now and I'm going to try to link these two together like that. See that? And I right now, it looks tilted. I mean, they line up, but they don't line up with everything else, is what I'm saying. All right. I'm going to leave it like that for now. If you want to change it later, go ahead and change it. But as far as I can tell, it's looking not great, but it's getting to where I want it to be. Now, I'm going to go to the ET URL right here, and what does it say? It says something about the view name. This view is not constrained horizontally, it says. So this ID is not constrained horizontally. This one here, which surprises me because I did move it up to here. All right. And then I said 8. It should be, but for some reason it's saying it's not. All right. My buttons, well, you know what the problem is with the buttons, or you should by now. All right, I'm going to go to the first button. I am going to remove the text that's in it. And then I'm going to go over, I think we already made the text for this. Maybe we didn't, because we need a save button and a cancel button here. So let's go back to strings. There was our add or edit button. So let's make 2 more strings. And this one will be save BTN. And it'll be save. And the other one will be cancel BTN. And it will say cancel. Okay? All right. Then I'm going to come back to here, not to there. Come back to here and jump back into here and go over here. And now I can change my text. And I want this one to be save button. There's that. And I'm going to go to the other one. I'm going to remove that text. And I want that to be called, I want to put in my cancel button. And I also want to make sure that I rename this if you haven't renamed yours. So the first one should be named BTN saved instead of button. So BTN save. And the second one should be named BTN cancel. And if you say you're going too fast or whatever, just look over on the side here. All the names are right there. Okay? All right, it's still giving me a couple things that are here. It says the name suggests URL. That's fine. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. Okay? All right. For this, for the URL? Oh, when I did it, I just made it a plain text. Yeah. I guess if we look under text type in here, I don't see one that says URL. See that? There's an email, but that's not what we're putting in here. There might be an actual URL control. I don't care though for right now. All right. So again, by no means is this perfect, but it's getting there, for lack of better words. Okay? All right. I got some notes that I've scribbled down over here. So we are going to go, and eventually we're going to add to the first page, we're going to add a menu. Not right now, but we will add one. All right. Now, I want to check something out. You don't have to do this. It used to be, and what I mean is, up until a couple versions ago, that when you put in the recycler view like we did, so going back to this page right here, so when you put in the recycler view like this, you would get an error message, or the equivalent of an error message. All right, and it would say it didn't know what the control was. Okay, just so you know, it would say that. I don't understand what this control is. All right, so you'd have to go into your Gradle scripts, and you'd have to go under your module for Gradle, and I'm going to look in here and see if it's in here. And I don't see it. Okay, yeah, it's got the word RecyclerView there. I get it, but that's the only one that's in there. You understand what I'm saying? And I want to make sure that we have absolutely no problems when we run this. Maybe it's just built in right now so you don't have to do this, but typically down here, you add another dependency for a RecyclerView. All right, so how would you even know that? Well, or how would you know what to add? So I would go out to develop, well, in fact, I'll just Google dependency for Android RecyclerView. All right, and it says basically we should do this. Now, there's a top one and then there's a bottom one. The bottom one says for control over the item selection on both touch and mouse driven. We're not worrying about touch in here. So if you were worried about touch, you could put both of these in. We're not. So I'm going to grab this, copy it to the clipboard, and then I'm going to paste it in right here. Now, if you say, well, you did that too fast or whatever, shouldn't matter whether we put these in single quotes or double quotes, but the rest of them are in single quotes, so I put it right there. All right. Now, what might happen when we run this later is we might either get an error or we might get a warning saying this is no longer needed. This is the first time I've gone through a RecyclerView example, because when I did this last year, you did have to go in. It came up and it said, hey, you've got to add this dependency. And when you click it, it would add it for you. See what I'm saying? All right, so I'm not sure if we'll need this or not. So we may end up removing this later. But I'm not worried about it, like I said, really one way or the other. I just want to make sure you have it in there. So if we do need it, we have it. All right. Okay, let's set it up so we can jump back and forth between our two activities. With me? This is the first time we're going to go in. Let's go into main activity.java. All right. And this is pretty simple as far as, well, we'll say button. I don't remember what we call that. Maybe you do. You're better than I am. But this was called button, add or edit president. Again, you don't have to call it the same thing in here. I think you understand what I'm saying. So in other words, I don't have to call it this. I can just call it button add. I can call it button edit, button president. It doesn't matter. But I am going to put that in and hit enter. All right. You got this. Again, I'm going to just do it Alt enter. So it adds the dependency. So that's been added here now. And the good news is that's almost everything we're going to need to do. Later we'll do something with the RecyclerView, but don't worry about it right now. Okay? All right, so you also know what we've got to do in onCreate, or you should remember that by now. You know, I'll put it by get references to widgets. All right, so btn equals find view by ID, r.id dot btn add or edit president. Okay. All right. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to set up one of those on item click listeners. Okay, so when we click it, you know how to do this now. So btn dot set on click listener, new V and hit tab. Does doing that make sense to you guys now as far as what's going on in there? Okay. And we're going to do just the kind of stuff we've been doing. So intent, we'll just call it intent, equals new intent, this, and the other page that we had was called what? Add or edit president.class. Okay, we're getting this error here. You know why, because we don't have our import for the intent. So again, Alt enter. Wrong one. Alt enter. There it is. All right. Now it's giving me an error here. What am I missing? I don't remember, but we'll fix it in just a second. All right. Let's see, because I've already got it done here. So what doesn't it like? I'm going to try something. Don't put this in, please. Oh, okay, why would it like that? Now, can I get rid of this? No. Okay, for some reason, it didn't like the word this. Now, I want to show you something because there's different things that you can put in there when this, just putting this doesn't work. Okay, I just want to show these to you. You can try putting in the name of the activity. So main activity dot this. Okay, so you can put in that. Okay, see it like that. Or you can typically type in get context, and usually it'll take that. Now it doesn't like that. So sometimes if you put in get application context, it'll take that. So you notice it takes this and it takes and I do want to mention, it's important enough, this just means what the current context is, what you're currently working with. But if you use the other one, you're making a call out to a method. It could slow the program down. It's going to be so little you couldn't tell. But all I'm trying to get to is there's different ways of doing this, period. All right? Now, the good news is, at least as of right now, we're not going to worry about puts, none of that stuff like we've been doing. And extras and whatever. So it's start activity, intent. All right. I'm going to save. And all I'm going to do right now is I'm going to run this, and I have no idea if it's going to run or not. And my guess is that second page is going to look really, really crummy. But I don't care, because we'll fix it up later. It's telling me here that when I did that before, I should have synced. If you got that, all that means is the Gradle file is sort of out of whack right now. So I'll fix that in a minute. Okay? Wow, that looks unbelievably terrible. But you get the idea, right? All right, we'll fix that after the break. So that's all fine, but right now save doesn't work and cancel doesn't work. We're going to make those work after the break. So what I'm going to do while you guys are on your break is I think I am going to make this stuff a little bit bigger. In fact, what we can do, I'm asking you, this is going to be your project. The idea is okay the way it is. All right, but we can change this and we can make this first name and last name here. You see that? Then we can just make these their regular size. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I'm going to do that during the break. Does all what I'm just saying make sense? I'm going to remove all my constraints that I have in here right now, everything. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to change that so it looks a little bit nicer. Okay, and we'll work on that part then when you come back. And then we'll do the other intent going the other way. Okay? All right, so it is 111. Let's come back and let's make it 125.